Welcome to a very special edition of the show. We're bringing a completely different energy today.
Yeah, we really are. It's going to be gritty.
Exactly. If you follow officiating at all, you know the uncompromising spirit of the hammer and umpire.
Oh, absolutely. The legends.
Right. We are channeling that exact ethos for this deep dive today. We're stepping into the metaphorical shoes of those old school guest hosts.
Treating the rule book like a sacred text. Because, let's face it, the modern game has gotten a little loose.
A little too loose.
And understanding the actual architecture of the rules, the text itself, is the only way to maintain order on the diamond.
Order. That is the operative word here.
You can't effectively enforce the law of the game if you don't understand the microscopic nuances of the text. It's almost an architectural beauty to the way these rules are constructed.
When a committee sitting in some boardroom alters a single sentence, regarding base dimensions or lineup cards,
it sends ripples, physical ripples across every dirt infield in the country. It changes muscle memory. It changes coaching strategies. It fundamentally alters the geometry of a Tuesday afternoon high school game.
Which is the perfect framing for our mission today, because whether you're a high school coach desperate to find a strategic edge in a tight playoff race, or a player terrified of getting called out on some obscure technicality,
or an umpire dreading the chaotic transition of this upcoming spring season,
or just a diehard baseball nerd who obsesses over the minutia of the game, we are doing the heavy lifting for you. We are completely unpacking the 2026 NFHS Baseball Rule Changes.
The National Federation of State High School Associations.
Right. We have a dense stack of sources to get through, starting with the verbatim 2026 NFHS rule text itself.
We're also leaning heavily on a phenomenal 3-part video breakdown by Patrick Farber over at Umpire Classroom.
He's great.
He is. He takes the dry legal text of the NFHS and translates it into the gritty reality of what umpires actually experience when the dirt starts flying.
And on top of that, we managed to get our hands on an exclusive NASO, the National Association of Sports Officials, internal one-pager.
Which is vital. It specifically deconstructs the new limitations on player-to-player meetings. So we have the letter of the law, the practical application, and the administrative guidance all sitting right in front of us.
We should probably jump straight into the administrative side of things first.
Get the paperwork out of the way.
Right. It's usually the driest part of the rule book. But looking at Rule 144, dealing with uniform standardization, there seems to be a much larger story here about the bureaucracy of high school sports.
Oh, massive.
The rule, which is effective January 1st, 2027, says schools can put their name, nickname, logo, mascot, and or the player's name on uniform tops or pants.
Yep.
But haven't teams basically been doing some variation of this for decades? Why did the NFHS feel the need to codify this so explicitly right now?
We have to look at this through the lens of a high school athletic director. Think about the nightmare of managing the compliance of half a dozen different sports programs.
Oh, dealing with vendors and all that.
Exactly. Historically, the football rule book had one highly pedantic standard for where a team logo could go. The basketball rule book had a completely different measurement requirement for a mascot patch. Soccer had its own restrictions.
And baseball.
Baseball might have allowed a nickname on the jersey, but strictly banned it on the pants. Athletic directors were constantly fielding complaints from state associations because a vendor printed the softball pants with a logo that was, a half-inch too wide, according to page 47 of that specific sports manual.
So this is essentially a universal peace treaty for uniform vendors and school administrators.
That's exactly what it is. It's a massive, sweeping mandate designed to create a unified standard across all NFHS sports. The Federation is finally throwing its hands up and saying, as long as it's your school's actual name, mascot, or logo.
Put it on the shirt, put it on the pants.
I don't care. Just make it consistent.
But how does that translate to the umpire standing behind home plate? If I'm calling a varsity game and a kid steps into the batter's box with a giant neon school mascot printed across the entire thigh of his pants.
Which you will see.
I know I will. And the opposing coach starts screaming that it's distracting his pitcher. What is my legal recourse there?
Patrick Farber is incredibly adamant about this specific scenario. His philosophy is, do not let the bureaucracy become your problem between the white lines.
You're there to call a game.
Right. You are there to adjudicate balls, strikes, safes, and outs. You are not the fashion police. If a coach complains about the size or placement of a logo under this new rule, you do not halt the game.
You don't make the kid change.
You definitely do not force a kid to go change his pants in the dugout. You acknowledge the coach's complaint, you officiate the full 7 innings, and when you get to your car after the game, you write up an administrative report and hand it up the chain to your assigner or the state association.
Let the guys in the suits argue about the patches. I can see how an umpire who gets bogged down in uniform disputes instantly loses the respect of the dugouts. It shows a lack of focus on the actual competition.
It does. It derails the whole tone.
And speaking of keeping the focus on the competition, Rule 163 feels like a direct retaliation against the modern culture of youth sports.
The tech ban.
Yes, the absolute ban on wearable tech. And the penalty is brutal. A team warning to the coach, and the very next offender, plus the head coach, gets instantly ejected.
It is a draconian penalty.
Yeah.
And it is entirely necessary to save the psychological integrity of the game.
Because of social media.
Because of viral content. We are living in an era where that concept has deeply infected amateur sports. You can't scroll through your feed without seeing a high school shortstop mic'd up trying to produce comedic banter with the runner on second base.
Or a batter wearing a GoPro strapped to his helmet during a scrimmage.
The NFHS is explicitly stating that the diamond is a sanctuary for competition. It is not a recording studio for a teenager's digital brand.
I imagine the nightmare for an umpire trying to figure out if a kid is talking trash to the opponent or just performing for a hidden microphone.
It completely shatters the concentration.
If you're fielding a ground ball while worrying about the audio quality of your catchphrase, your head is not in the game. But the rulebook always has carve-outs. We know there's an exception regarding communication from the dugout, right?
Right. Umpires shouldn't be ripping legal earpieces out of catchers' helmets.
Good to clarify.
The one-way electronic communication exception remains firmly intact. A coach is legally permitted to use a transmitting device in the dugout to send pitch calls to a receiving device worn by the catcher.
Usually a small radio tucked into the back pocket, right?
Wired up to a simple earpiece inside the helmet. The crucial limitation is that it must be one-way communication only. The catcher cannot talk back to the dugout using the device.
Here is where the technicalities get tricky, though. Most of those small receivers, like standard walkie-talkies, inherently possess the hardware capability to transmit.
They all have a button.
There's usually a push-to-talk button on the side. If an umpire inspects the catcher's radio and sees that button, does he confiscate it under the ban on transmitting devices?
He absolutely should not. The NFHS understands the practical reality of the equipment available to high school budgets. Even if the device can transmit, the rule is about the application of the technology.
The intent.
Think about the physical mechanics of a catcher. He is wearing a chest protector, shin guards, a heavy mask, and he is squatting in the dirt.
He can't exactly reach around easily.
There is no practical, covert way for him to reach around to his back pocket, hold down a transmit button, and speak into a microphone without the umpire and the batter noticing immediately. As long as the device is being used solely to receive signs, the hardware's dormant capabilities are ignored.
Okay, so the players are locked out of the content game, but I found Patrick Farber's commentary on umpires wanting to use wearable tech to be absolutely fascinating.
A great perspective.
He takes this rule and applies it philosophically to the men in blue. Why is he so vehemently against an umpire wearing a chest-mounted camera to record the game?
It goes back to the core philosophy of what an official is supposed to be. Farber draws a brilliant distinction between a professional broadcast and an amateur game. If you are working the World Series and a television network pays millions of dollars for broadcast rights, and they ask you to wear an ump cam to provide a cool angle for the viewers at home,
You wear it.
you wear it. MLB is an entertainment product designed for public consumption.
But a Thursday afternoon junior varsity game in a municipal park is a fundamentally different ecosystem.
Precisely. When an umpire walks onto a high school field wearing a GoPro strapped to his chest protector, it fundamentally alters the psychological dynamic of the entire facility.
It sets a weird tone.
It sends a subconscious and sometimes very conscious message to the coaches, the players, and the fans of the bleachers that the umpire believes the game is about him.
It creates an adversarial environment before the first pitch is even thrown. If I'm a coach and I see the umpire recording me, my immediate thought is that he's trying to bait me into an argument.
Just so he can post a viral angry coach ejection compilation on YouTube?
That is exactly the danger. It obliterates trust.
Farber bluntly stated that if he were acting as an assigner for a state tournament and he found out an official was wearing a personal camera, he would permanently pull that umpire from high-stakes games.
Wow. Permanently.
The assigner needs to know your primary objective is arbitrating fair play for the athletes, not gathering footage for your personal reel.
That is a phenomenal piece of career advice for any official listening. Before we close the book on the administrative section, I see a note here about a change to the designated hitter rule. I read through the text, and I honestly couldn't figure out what the mechanical difference was supposed to be on the field.
You couldn't find the mechanical difference because there isn't one. The DH rule change is purely an editorial fix.
So no real impact.
None. Essentially, in previous versions of the rulebook, a specific clause regarding the DH was floating in the wrong subsection.
Just a typo, basically.
Technically, it made it apply to situations it was never intended to govern. The folks at Referee Magazine noticed the syntactical error and submitted the correction to the NFHS.
So umpires can just ignore it.
Completely ignore it. You will track, manage, and officiate the designated hitter exactly the same way you have for the last 5 years.
I appreciate the clarification because rulebook anxiety is real, and it's nice to know we can cross that one off the worry list. Let's move away from the administrative paperwork and get into the actual dirt of the game.
The fun stuff.
I want to talk about the courtesy runner. The NFHS released a new Case Play 3.1.4 Situation K that highlights a loophole coaches have been exploiting.
They always find one.
From reading the text, it sounds like coaches found a literal cheat code for slow base runners. How exactly were they manipulating the lineup card to pull this off?
High school baseball coaches are some of the most diabolically clever tactical minds in sports. They treat the rulebook like a hacker treats computer code. They look for the vulnerabilities.
Right. And the courtesy runner rule was originally instituted purely for pace of play.
Exactly. If your catcher hits a single with 2 outs, you want to get him off the bases, into the dugout, and strapping his shin guards on so he's ready to take the field the moment the 3rd out happens.
It prevents those agonizing 3-minute delays between half innings while everyone stands around waiting for the catcher to get dressed.
But here's the vulnerability the coaches found. Let's build this scenario. Imagine the visiting team is handing in their lineup card at home plate before the game.
Okay, we're at the plate meeting.
The coach takes his biggest, slowest, least athletic power hitter, a kid who exclusively plays first base, and explicitly lists him on the official lineup card as the starting catcher.
Okay, the game begins. Top of the first inning. That big slugger steps into the box and mashes a double into the gap. He's standing on second base, breathing heavily.
Instantly, the visiting coach calls time, points to the umpire, and requests a courtesy runner for his quote-unquote catcher.
And the umpire looks at the card.
Now, under a rigid, literal, robotic reading of the lineup card, that player is technically listed as the catcher. So the umpire grants the request. The coach pulls his slow slugger off the base and replaces him with the fastest track star on the roster.
So the inning eventually ends. The visiting team grabs their gloves to take the field for the bottom of the first. What happens to our so-called catcher?
The coach simply makes a defensive substitution before the first pitch is thrown. He takes the slow slugger, moves him to first base, and takes the kid who was listed at first base and puts him in the catcher's gear behind the plate.
Unbelievable.
The coach effectively manufactured a free pinch runner for his slowest player without actually having to burn a permanent offensive substitution. He manipulated the administrative document to violate the physical reality of the game.
That is infuriatingly brilliant, but the NFHS is finally slamming the door on this stunt. The verdict in the new case play rules this specific maneuver entirely illegal.
Good.
The penalty is an immediate official warning to the head coach for violating the spirit of fair play. If a coach tries to argue or attempts a similar manipulation later, it escalates to a restriction to the bench or a full ejection.
The courtesy runner is an administrative tool for game flow. It's not an offensive weapon for your sluggers.
The underlying philosophy is that if you demand a courtesy runner for a player in the top of the first inning based on their listed position,
that player is ethically and legally bound to actually appear defensively at that position in the bottom of the first inning. You have to honor the intent of the substitution.
But baseball is a game of infinite variables, which is why we have to examine the exceptions. What if a coach isn't acting maliciously?
Stuff happens.
Let's say the big slugger genuinely was scheduled to catch the whole game, but as he's rounding first base on that double, he visibly pulls his hamstring. He gets his courtesy runner, but when the inning flips, he physically cannot squat behind home plate. Does a coach get penalized with a warning for moving him to first base?
No, because an umpire possesses eyes and common sense. An injury substitution is universally recognized.
The umpire saw him grab his leg?
The umpire witnessed the injury occur during the live play. The coach is forced to move the player to a less physically demanding position or remove him from the game entirely. The violation we are discussing is strictly regarding the intentional, bad faith manipulation of the lineup card to circumvent substitution rules.
Let's dig deeper into the timing of this loophole because the case play seems to suggest this is only a punishable offense in a very specific window of the game. If the home team's coach tries to pull this exact same trick with his lineup card, does it matter?
It's impossible for the home team to execute this loophole in the same way. Think about the physical mechanics of the innings.
They play defense first.
They take the field in the top of the first inning. Therefore, whoever is listed as the catcher on the lineup card must physically put on the gear, squat behind the plate, and catch the opponent's batters.
By the time the home team gets to bat in the bottom of the first, the player's status as the true catcher is already established by physical reality, not just pen and paper.
Exactly. If that player gets on base in the bottom of the first, he has undeniably earned the right to a courtesy runner. And the same logic applies to the visiting team in the second inning.
Wait, really?
Yes, if a visiting coach makes a defensive swap in the second inning, moving his first baseman to catcher and his catcher to first base, that is completely legal. The rulebook does not punish defensive flexibility.
You can move guys around.
You can swap your fielders around every single batter if you want to, as long as it's not the pitcher. The NFHS is solely targeting that specific narrow window in the top of the first inning, where a team tries to claim a privilege for a position they haven't actually played yet.
The lesson for the listener is clear. The umpires are onto the trick. Don't try to outsmart the fundamental fairness of the game in the first 10 minutes.
It's just play ball.
Now, grab your protractors, your chalk lines, and maybe a bottle of aspirin, because we have to tackle the absolute elephant in the room. This is the change that is going to cause coaches to lose their minds, runners to trip over themselves, and umpires to constantly second-guess their positioning.
Oh, boy.
We are unpacking the double first base.
Calling it an elephant is almost an understatement. This is arguably the most significant physical alteration to the geometry of the high school baseball diamond in half a century.
We are fundamentally changing the physical footprint of where the game is played,
which forces a total mental rewiring of split-second muscle memory for every athlete on the field.
Let's establish the timeline first, looking at Rule 129. This isn't a hard mandate across the board right away. For the 2026 season, the double first base is optional.
A grace period.
A state association, a local league, or even an individual high school can choose to implement it. But effective January 1st, 2027, the grace period ends, and it becomes mandatory across the entire NFHS landscape. How much chaos is this optional year going to cause?
The transitional reality of 2026 is going to be a logistical nightmare. Picture a varsity team in a competitive conference.
Oh.
On Tuesday, they travel to a well-funded suburban school that has already installed the new double first base.
Okay.
The players spend 7 innings adjusting their footwork to this massive new obstacle. Then, on Thursday, they play a rural school that is holding out until 2027, and then we're back to the traditional single 15-inch bag.
That back and forth is going to mess with their heads.
The inconsistency in the physical playing surface from game to game is going to create immense friction and hesitation for base runners.
Let's clearly define what this thing actually looks like, because visualizing the geometry is the only way to understand the rules that govern it. We all know the traditional first base, a white canvas square, 15 inches by 15 inches, staked entirely in fair territory, with the foul line running perfectly along its outer right edge. How does the double first base alter that blueprint?
The double first base takes that exact same 15 by 15-inch white bag and permanently fuses it to a contrasting colored bag, usually a highly visible safety orange or bright green.
Okay, so a colored half.
This colored portion is identically sized, 15 by 15 inches.
And where exactly does the colored portion sit relative to the foul line?
The white portion remains exactly where it has always been, sitting flush against the inside of the foul line in fair territory. The contrasting colored portion sits directly beside it, flush against the outside edge of the foul line, entirely in foul territory.
So they're bolted together.
They are joined tightly together, creating a massive 15-inch by 30-inch rectangular plateau. The chalk of the first base foul line perfectly bisects the two halves.
A 30-inch wide base. We have literally introduced a permanent piece of physical equipment into foul territory. Because of that structural reality, the NFHS had to rewrite rules 251 hour or 216 hour to completely redefine what constitutes a fair or foul ball.
They had to.
For 100 years, the golden rule of baseball has been, if a batted ball hits the base, it's a fair ball. I assume that blanket statement is now dead.
You have to completely erase that phrase from your vocabulary. It is structurally false now. To determine fair or foul, we had to deeply analyze the physics of a bounding ball as it interacts with this new 30-inch rectangle.
I love the mental model of comparing the base to a sidewalk. Think of the white portion as the concrete sidewalk, which is safe, fair territory. Think of the colored portion as the grass next to the sidewalk, which is out of bounds, foul territory. Let's run through the scenarios outlined in case play 1.
Let's do it.
A batter hits a screaming grounder right down the chalk line. It's a bounding ball chopping through the dirt. In situation A, the ball bounds directly over the white portion of the base, catches the edge of the colored portion, and ricochets into right field.
Because the ball initiated its bound over the airspace of the white portion, the fair territory sidewalk, the umpire must rule it a fair ball. The subsequent ricochet off the colored portion doesn't negate the initial fair trajectory.
Okay, situation B. The ground ball is perfectly straddling the line. As it hops over the base, it is bounding through the airspace of both the white portion and the colored portion simultaneously, perfectly splitting the middle before rolling into the outfield.
This is also undeniably a fair ball. The revised rule explicitly dictates that a batted ball is fair if it hits or bounds over any portion of the white half of the double first base.
So even if it's over the color too?
Because part of the ball crossed the white airspace, its presence over the colored airspace is irrelevant. It is fair.
Now for the paradigm shift. Situation C. The batter hooks a ground ball slightly foul. It bounds down the dirt, hops up, and travels entirely over the colored foul territory bag without a single millimeter of the baseball crossing the airspace of the white bag. It hits the orange canvas and deflects down the right field line.
That is a foul ball. And that is the exact scenario that is going to cause coaches to sprint out of the dugout screaming.
I can see it now.
A batted ball physically struck the structure of first base, and the umpire is throwing his hands up calling foul. But if you rely on the underlying geometry, it makes perfect sense. The colored bag is essentially just elevated foul dirt.
Elevated foul dirt. That's a great way to put it.
If a ball bounces over foul dirt without ever crossing into fair territory, it is foul. The physics haven't changed, only the architecture of the field.
That sidewalk and grass analogy is going to save umpires a lot of headaches. But understanding whether the ball is fair or foul is only half the battle. We have to discuss how the human beings moving at 20 miles per hour interact with this new 30-inch rectangle. Let's examine the rules of engagement, starting with the offensive side. What is the batter runner's mandate under Rule 821? If I hit a ground ball to the shortstop, where am I legally required to place my foot when I reach first base?
On any initial contested play at first base, like beating out a ground ball, the batter runner is legally mandated to step on the contrasting colored base located in foul territory.
It's all about safety.
The entire purpose of this rule change is collision avoidance. By forcing the runner to use the outside lane, we separate the offensive player's body from the defensive player catching the throw.
What happens if the runner, operating on a decade of deeply ingrained muscle memory, sprints down the line and steps squarely on the white base to beat the throw?
Under the strict interpretation of the rule for an initial play, stepping on the white base is the legal equivalent of stepping on thin air. The runner has touched a base they have absolutely no legal right to occupy in that specific moment. We will get into the specific penalty mechanics for that shortly, but the foundational principle is white is wrong for the runner.
Patrick Farber introduces this fascinating pedagogical concept called the disappearing base to help umpires track the legality of the runner's position after that initial sprint. How does that concept work?
It's the best way to visualize the flow of a play. The colored base only exists in reality for that singular initial sprint down the line on a live throw.
So what happens after?
The moment the batter runner safely runs through the base and touches the dirt beyond it, or the moment they take a wide turn into the outfield and begin returning, the colored base essentially disappears from the rulebook. It ceases to exist as a legal sanctuary. For any action involving returning to the base or standing on the base after the initial play, the runner must use the white portion.
So the colored base is a one-time use runway. That covers the offense. What about the defense? What are the constraints on the first baseman?
The defense's mandate is the exact mirror image. For any live initial play originating from within the infield, the defensive player must use the white portion of the base to legally record the out. The defense must operate as if the colored base is lava.
Lava. I like that.
If the shortstop fields a grounder, throws to first, and the first baseman stretches out and catches the ball while his foot is planted solely on the orange-colored bag in foul territory, he is not recorded an out. He is touching foul ground, not the actual legal first base.
That seems beautifully clean. The offense stays in the colored lane in foul territory. The defense stays in the white lane in fair territory. Everyone stays safe. Nobody collides.
In theory.
Right. But this is baseball, and the rulebook loves to introduce chaos. We have to discuss the great exception, which is the uncaught third strike. This is where umpires are going to earn their money.
The dropped third strike is the great destroyer of this clean parallel lane system. A pitch in the dirt kicks away from the catcher, and suddenly a routine strikeout devolves into a desperate foot race to first base. The variable that changes everything is the unpredictability of the ball's location.
Right. A ground ball to shortstop is predictable. The throw is always coming from the same general angle. But on a dropped third strike, the ball could deflect anywhere. It could roll down the first baseline in fair territory, forcing the catcher to throw from inside the diamond. Or it could ricochet off the backstop deep into foul territory, forcing the catcher to throw from near the dugout. Because the angle of the throw is entirely unpredictable, the rigid lane assignments become incredibly dangerous.
Exactly. If the ball rolls into foul territory and the catcher is throwing from foul ground toward first base, forcing the first baseman to stand on the white bag in fair territory while the runner sprints down the colored bag in foul territory means the throw has to cross directly through the runner's body.
It's a guaranteed collision.
That guarantees a high-speed collision. Therefore, the NFHS rulebook suspends the lane assignments entirely. On an uncaught third strike, both the batter runner and the defensive fielder are granted absolute freedom to use either the white base or the colored base. It becomes a situational free-for-all, governed only by the player's instinct to avoid hitting each other.
Let's ground this in reality by walking through case plays 4 and 5. In case play 4, the batter swings and misses for strike 3. The ball kicks wildly into foul territory. The catcher scrambles, secures the ball, and fires it toward first base. The first baseman sees the angle of the throw coming from foul ground. To avoid getting blown up by the runner, the first baseman abandons the white bag, stretches out, and catches the ball while standing completely on the colored base. The throw beats the runner.
The umpire must rule the batter-runner out. Even though the fielder used the colored base, which is strictly illegal on a normal ground ball to short, the uncaught third strike exception legally permits the defense to use the foul territory bag. He legally held the base and recorded the out.
Now let's look at case play 5, which is the exact same scenario. Strike 3, ball in the dirt. Catcher retrieves it in foul territory and throws. But this time, the first baseman decides to hold his ground. He keeps his foot anchored on the white base in fair territory and catches the ball before the runner arrives.
The ruling remains the same. The batter-runner is OUT. The defense has total autonomy on this specific play. They can use white, they can use color. A legal catch on either portion before the runner touches a base is an out, and the exact same autonomy is granted to the batter-runner.
So the runner can adjust too.
If the runner sees the first baseman setting up on the colored bag to receive a throw from foul territory, the runner can legally veer inside and step on the white bag to avoid the collision, and he will be called safe if he beats the throw.
This sounds like a recipe for a massive misunderstanding regarding a completely different rule. If I'm a coach and you tell me my runner is allowed to use the white base in fair territory on a dropped third strike, I'm going to tell my kid to sprint straight down the middle of fair territory to get there. Does this exception effectively neutralize the runner's lane interference rule?
That is a phenomenal question, and the answer is an emphatic NO. This is where nuance is critical. The runner's lane is that 3-foot-wide chalk box drawn in foul territory for the final 45 feet before first base. The rulebook strictly mandates that a runner must be inside that box to avoid interfering with a throw coming from behind them.
Right.
The double first base exception allows the runner to touch the white base at the very end of their sprint. It does not grant them immunity to run their entire route outside of the designated lane. If a runner sprints down fair territory on a dropped third strike and the catcher's throw hits him in the back, the umpire is immediately calling him out for runner's lane interference. You still have to use the foul lane to travel. You just have the option to cross over and tap the white base at the final moment.
That distinction is going to win or lose the state championship game, I guarantee it. Now, Rule 822AA provides a breakdown of how the double first base operates in 7 common non-batted ball scenarios. Let's rapid fire through these to solidify the mental model. Scenario 1. The batter crushes a clean double into the left center gap. There is obviously no play being made at first base. Where does he step as he rounds the bag?
Without a contested play, the lane restrictions vanish. The runner can use either the white or the colored base as his pivot point while rounding first. Whichever bag his natural stride hits is perfectly legal.
Scenario 2. A runner is on first base. The batter hits a deep fly ball to right field. The runner at first needs to tag up.
The runner must use the white base to tag up. Remember the disappearing base concept. Once a runner has established themselves at first, the colored base ceases to exist. While tagging up, a runner might have his heel hanging off the back onto the colored canvas, but the front of his foot must maintain physical contact with the white base to constitute a legal tag.
Scenario 3. A standard pickoff move. The pitcher spins and throws to the first baseman to keep the runner close.
Again, the runner must dive back to the white base. The colored bag provides no legal sanctuary for a returning runner. If he dives and only grabs the orange bag and the first baseman tags him, he is out.
Scenario 4. A standard base on balls. The batter draws a walk and jogs down the line.
Because the batter is not under pressure and there is no live throw coming to the base, he can casually jog down and touch either the white or the colored base to initially establish his position, though he must immediately transition to the white base to take his lead.
The logic holds up beautifully when you isolate the scenarios. But isolation isn't reality. Reality is 9 teenagers moving at high speeds while a baseball is flying through the air. Mistakes are going to happen, people are going to step on the wrong bag, and bodies are going to crash into each other. Which brings us to Section 5, collisions, missed bases, and appeals. This is the absolute nightmare scenario for umpires.
It is the crucible of officiating. To survive these plays, an umpire must possess a crystal clear understanding of the exact triggers for interference versus obstruction at the double first base. It all boils down to identifying who is legally entitled to the space they're occupying.
Let's tackle interference first. Interference is a penalty called on the offense, resulting in an immediate dead ball and the runner being called out. How is that triggered here?
Interference at the double first base occurs when the batter runner breaks the positional rule and causes a crash. Let's say it's a routine ground ball to short. The batter runner is legally mandated to run to the colored base. Instead, he runs and touches only the white base in fair territory. At the exact same moment, the first baseman is legally standing on the white base attempting to catch the throw.
And boom!
The runner's illegal presence on the white base causes him to violently collide with the fielder, disrupting the catch. The runner broke the rule, caused a collision, and is out for interference.
Now flip the script. Obstruction is a penalty called on the defense. It's a delayed dead ball, usually resulting in the runner being awarded the base.
Obstruction is the exact inverse. Routine ground ball. The batter runner is doing everything right, sprinting toward the colored base in foul territory. But the first baseman, perhaps misjudging the throw, drifts off the white base and completely physically blocks the colored base. The runner crashes into the fielder who is standing on the foul territory bag. The fielder broke the positional rule, impeded the runner's legal path, caused a collision, and the umpire will rule obstruction, awarding the runner first base.
But there is a massive caveat here, a golden rule that governs all of this. What happens if someone is in the wrong place, but nobody touches each other?
That is the most critical sentence in the entire rule book regarding this equipment. To trigger these specific interference or obstruction penalties at the double first base, there must be a physical collision. If the runner runs over the white base while the fielder is on it, but they miraculously avoid touching each other, there is no interference. If the fielder blocks the colored base, but the runner manages to dance around him without contact, there is no obstruction, no collision, no penalty.
And that specific golden rule leads us directly into a psychological trap that absolutely devastated umpires in recent testing scenarios. Let's look at the missed base scenario, detailed in Case Play 2. This is the play that is going to get umpires yelled at by 50% of the stadium no matter what they call. Walk me through the setup.
Imagine a perfectly executed drag bunt down the first baseline. The pitcher scrambles off the mound, fields the ball, and flips it to the first baseman. The first baseman is positioned perfectly, standing legally on the white base, stretching toward the pitcher. The batter runner is sprinting out of the box, but in his panic to beat the throw, he forgets the new geometry. He steps heavily, exclusively on the white base as he crosses the bag. He crosses the bag a fraction of a second before the ball hits the fielder's glove.
Bang, bang, play.
Crucially, by some miracle of agility, and no collision occurs. The runner brushes past the fielder's outstretched arm completely safely.
In a recent testing environment, the NFHS showed this exact scenario on video to a room full of experienced umpires. 40% of them immediately threw their fists in the air and yelled, "He's out! Interference! He touched the wrong base." Only 33% of the room correctly analyzed the play. Why did so many veteran umpires instinctively punch him out?
Because their brains short-circuited. They saw a runner step on a base he wasn't legally allowed to touch, and their instinct demanded an immediate penalty. But they forgot the golden rule. Because there was no physical collision, you absolutely cannot call interference. The runner simply touched a piece of canvas he had no legal right to touch.
So if it's not interference, what is the legal status of the play?
In the cold, unfeeling eyes of the rulebook, touching the wrong half of the double base without causing a collision is classified simply as a missed base. It is the exact same legal scenario as a kid hitting a triple and forgetting to step on second base as he rounds the bag.
Which fundamentally alters the mechanics of how the umpire handles the immediate call. The ball beats the runner, but the runner touched a base first. What does the umpire signal?
The umpire must aggressively signal safe. Think about the facts of the play. The runner physically arrived at the geographical location of first base before the fielder secured the ball. The fact that the runner touched the wrong canvas is irrelevant to the initial timing of the play. He beat the throw. Safe.
I can already hear the defensive coach losing his mind. Blue! He stepped on the white base. He's out. How does the defense actually secure the out they deserve?
This is where baseball turns into a chess match. The defense knows the runner missed the correct colored base. The umpire knows the runner missed it. But the umpire cannot actively punish a missed base without being asked. To get the out, the defense must execute a live ball appeal.
Walk me through the physical mechanics of that appeal. What does the first baseman actually have to do?
Actually, the umpire calls the runner safe. The play is still live. The runner is decelerating in foul territory down the right field line. The first baseman, still holding the ball, must turn around and either physically tag the runner or step firmly on the colored base before the runner casually jogs back and touches the white base. If the first baseman steps on the colored bag and says, "Ump, he missed his base," then the umpire points and calls him out on the appeal. It requires an active, conscious execution by the defense.
That is a staggering paradigm shift for how we perceive outs at first base. It requires the defense to know the rules better than the runner. But the chaos escalates even further in case play 3, which we can call the errant throw scenario. Let's build this one.
This is the play that will make you question your sanity. 2 outs, bottom of the 7th, ground ball to the shortstop. The shortstop rushes the throw and airmails it. The throw is wildly offline, pulling the first baseman completely off a white base and dragging him deep into foul territory. The first baseman makes a miraculous leaping catch, but he lands and plants his foot solely on the colored base.
Okay, so the fielder is on the wrong base. Where is the runner?
The batter runner, seeing this massive human being flying into foul territory, reflexively alters his path to avoid getting crushed. He veers into fair territory and steps squarely on the white base just as the ball is caught. Again, thankfully, no collision occurs.
We have a defensive player using the offensive base. We have an offensive player using the defensive base. They both broke the lane restrictions. Who wins this game of architectural chicken?
The runner is safe, and the logic requires you to deconstruct the play step by step. Let's look at the defense first. Because this is an initial play, the colored base does not exist as a legal entity for the fielder. By standing on the colored base, the first baseman never legally occupied first base. Therefore, he never recorded an out.
Okay, but the runner used the white base, which is also illegal for him on an initial play. Why isn't he out for being in the wrong lane?
Because the runner beat nothing. The fielder didn't record an out, so the runner arrives safely. However, the runner is currently sitting on a massive liability, a missed base violation. The fact that the fielder screwed up and stood in the wrong spot does not magically grant the runner legal permission to use the wrong base. 2 wrongs do not make a right in the NFHS rulebook.
So it's a dual-layered penalty system. The umpire initially calls the runner safe because the fielder failed to record the out, but the runner is highly vulnerable.
Extremely vulnerable. The play is still live. The runner is past the bag, standing on a missed base violation. If the first baseman, who was already standing on the colored base with the ball, simply realizes what happened, he can instantly execute a live ball appeal by tapping the colored base and telling the umpire the runner missed it. The umpire would then immediately reverse the call and ring the runner out. It requires immense situational awareness from the players.
It's exhilarating to dissect these mechanics. I want to throw one more scenario at you before we leave the geometry of first base. This one isn't even explicitly printed in the NFHS casebook yet, but Patrick Farber brilliantly pulls from NCAA logic to find the solution. Let's call this the shin guard loophole found in NCAA Case Play 7.
This perfectly highlights the gaps that emerge when you drop new geometry onto an old game. The rulebook can't predict every human action. Here is the setup. The batter hits a clean infield single to deep short. He sprints down the line, runs straight through the colored base perfectly legally, and beats the throw. He decelerates into foul territory past the bag, makes absolutely no aggressive move towards second base, and begins to casually walk back toward first base.
So far, this is standard, everyday baseball. He has post-over-run protection. As long as he returns immediately to the base without feinting towards second, he cannot be tagged out.
Correct. His protective bubble is intact, but here is the catch. As he walks back up the foul line, he stops. He is standing only on the orange-colored portion of the double base. He bends down, takes off his batting gloves, and starts unbuckling his heavy plastic shin guard. The first baseman, holding the ball, sneaks up behind him and tags him on the shoulder.
Is he out or safe? He is physically standing on a piece of canvas attached to the ground, but it's the colored base, which we explicitly established disappears for returning runners. He's standing on an illusion.
This is exactly where the NFHS text goes silent and where umpires panic. But the NCAA issued a formal interpretation for this exact scenario that Farber adopts for high school play, relying on the fundamental spirit of the rule. The definitive verdict is that the runner is safe.
Walk me through the philosophical logic of that, because it feels intensely counterintuitive to declare a runner safe when he's standing on a base that supposedly doesn't exist for him anymore.
It all hinges on the legal definition of a completed return. When a batter-runner overruns first base on an infield single, the rules grant him a temporary magical bubble of immunity from being tagged out, provided he returns immediately. The crucial question is, when does that bubble of immunity pop? It only pops when the runner legally completes his return to the base.
The light bulb just went on. How does a runner legally complete their return under the new double base rules?
By physically touching the white base. Because our runner is standing on the colored base while taking his shin guard off, he has not yet touched the white base. Therefore, in the eyes of the law, his legal return has not yet occurred. He is still technically in the process of returning. Because he is still returning, his protective overrun bubble is still fully intact. The tag is meaningless. He is safe.
That is an incredible piece of legal maneuvering. But let's alter the timeline slightly to prove the rule. What if the runner walked back up the line, casually tapped the white base with his toe to show the umpire he was back, and then stepped backwards onto the colored base to unbuckle his shin guard?
Then he is dead to rights. OUT. The exact millisecond, his toe tapped the white base, his legal return was completed, and his protective bubble vanished. By stepping backwards onto the colored base, which, remember, does not legally exist for a returning runner, he has physically stepped off the legal playing surface. He is standing in foul territory without protection. The tag is applied. The out is recorded. In the rule book, the order of operations is everything.
The order of operations is everything. What a brilliant summation of the entire double first base dilemma. Okay, we are going to shift gears entirely. We are leaving the physical spatial geometry of the bases, and we are moving into the temporal geometry of the game. Section 6, pace of play and the don't get greedy rule. We're talking about the brand new limitations on player-to-player or P2P meetings.
The NFHS rulemakers do not live in a vacuum. They watch the same games we do. They hear the complaints from the bleachers, the parents, and the local broadcasters. High school baseball games were dragging on for 3 hours. And when they analyzed the data, they realized a major culprit wasn't necessarily endless pitching changes or long at-bats. It was the players endlessly policing themselves.
We have all watched this specific kid play. The hyper-intense, over-caffeinated varsity shortstop who firmly believes he is the defensive coordinator. Every time the pitcher throws 2 consecutive curveballs in the dirt, the shortstop throws his hands up, calls time, jogs to the mound, puts his glove over his mouth like a major leaguer, and delivers a 30-second motivational speech. 2 batters later, the third baseman feels left out and does the exact same thing. It completely destroys the rhythm of the game.
Rule 210.3 was written specifically to eradicate that exact behavior. It introduces a brand new legally defined term into the rulebook, the player-to-player defensive meeting. The explicit goal is to target and eliminate unnecessary player-initiated stoppages that artificially inflate the runtime of the game.
To enforce a rule, we first have to strictly define its boundaries. What exactly constitutes a P2P meeting, and just as importantly, what does not? The rulebook lays out a three-pronged definition. First, it must involve two or more defensive players. Second, it must obviously occur while the team is out in the field on defense. And third, and this is the absolute anchor of the rule, it must delay the game because time is officially granted by the umpire.
That third prong is the entire bowl game. If there is no officially granted delay, there is no meeting. Now let's reference the NASA one-pager we have in our stack of sources because it clarifies a massive point of administrative confusion for umpires. A player-to-player meeting is not the same thing as a charged conference.
Right, we need to separate those buckets. A charged defensive conference involves a coach physically crossing the foul line to come out and talk to his pitcher or defense. The rulebook already strictly limits how many times a coach can do that. The new P2P meeting strictly involves players talking to other players without the coach present. They are tracked on two completely separate ledgers. The NASA document explicitly commands umpires do not count P2P meetings toward charged conferences.
So with the definition established, what is the actual limit imposed by Rule 346? A defensive team is granted exactly one player-to-player meeting per inning. Period. Hard stop.
Just to be painstakingly clear, that is not one meeting per pitcher. That is not one meeting per infielder. That is one meeting per inning for the entire defensive unit.
Exactly. It does not matter if the meeting consists of just the catcher walking halfway to the mound to whisper to the pitcher, or if all four infielders converge on the rubber for a summit. It counts as the team's one allowed meeting. And crucially, they do not carry over. It is a use it or lose it system. If a team doesn't use a P2P meeting in the first inning, they do not magically inherit two meetings in the second inning. If a team uses their one meeting in the third inning, any subsequent requests by the players for time to talk in that same half inning must be aggressively denied by the umpire. No time, play ball.
Now, this is where umpires can get themselves into a massive amount of unnecessary trouble if they decide to act like dictators on the field. We need to discuss the gray areas of what does not count as a P2P meeting. Farber's guiding principle here is fantastic applying common sense.
Umpires cannot become robotic hall monitors out there. The spirit of the rule is targeting egregious game delays, not punishing normal, healthy baseball communication. Let's run through the exceptions. What about a pre-inning huddle? The pitcher throws his final warm-up toss down to second base. The infield briefly gathers at the mound for 5 seconds. The shortstop yells, "Let's go get him," and they break to their positions before the batter even reaches the dirt circle around home plate. Does an umpire write that down as a P2P meeting?
Absolutely not. Go back to the third prong of the definition. Time wasn't granted to stop live play because the inning hadn't officially started yet. No delay of the actual competition, no meeting. What about after a strikeout? The catcher fires the ball down at third base, they toss it around the horn, the third baseman jogs over, hands the ball to the pitcher, pats him on the chest protector, and goes back to his spot. Is that a meeting?
Again, no. Tossing the ball around the horn is a deeply ingrained standard transitional mechanic of the sport. It happens while the next batter is walking to the plate. It does not artificially delay the next pitch from being thrown. Therefore, it is exempt. How about this scenario? A batter hits a deep fly ball into the left center gap. The center fielder and the left fielder converge. The center fielder catches it, and as they jog back to their respective zones, they talk to each other about who had vocal priority on the call.
Not a meeting. They didn't stop, look at the umpire, and demand a timeout to have a summit in the outfield grass. They communicated while in transit. And of course, if players chat while the umpire has called an official injury timeout, say, to check on a batter who took a 90-mile-per-hour foul ball off the ankle, that doesn't count against the defense either. The delay was initiated by the injury, not by the players seeking a tactical advantage.
The most strategically complex exception is what we call the supersede rule. This dictates the hierarchical interaction between P2P meetings and coach-led charged conferences.
This is a phenomenal tactical nugget for any coaches listening. Let's build the scenario. The offensive team's head coach calls time. He walks out of the dugout to have a charged offensive conference with his batter at the plate. While the offensive coach is talking to his hitter, can the defensive infield gather at the mound to chat?
Yes, they absolutely can. Because the offensive team initiated the stoppage of play and burned a charged conference, the clock is already stopped. The defense is essentially operating on free time. They can huddle up, and the umpire will not count it against their limit of one P2P meeting for the inning. The offensive conference legally supersedes the defensive meeting.
But the inverse is absolutely not true. If the defensive shortstop calls time to use the team's one allowed P2P meeting at the mound, the offensive coach cannot suddenly sprint out of the dugout to talk to his batter, assuming it's free. If the offensive coach does that, the umpire must charge him with an offensive conference. A player-initiated defensive meeting does not grant the opposing coach a free pass to halt the game.
The overarching philosophical advice Farber gives umpires regarding this entire new framework is, don't get greedy. The rule was written with a narrow target. It is designed to stop the annoying shortstop from pretending to be a manager. It is not designed to prevent a catcher from taking 2 steps in front of home plate to quickly calm down a hyperventilating pitcher. If an umpire tries to maliciously expand the definition of a P2P meeting to penalize every single conversation on the field, they're going to completely lose control of the game's temperature and infuriate everyone involved.
And speaking of infuriating situations, that transitions us perfectly into our final segment, Section 7, the safety gray area. This is where the pristine, theoretical rulebook violently collides with the physical reality of a high-speed sport, and where umpires are forced to make high-stakes, real-time judgment calls that could determine a player's physical safety.
We are looking at a glaring, almost dangerous contradiction buried in the NFHS casebook, specifically between Case Play 4 and Case Play 5, regarding how these new P2P meeting limits are enforced. Let's examine the facts of Case Play 4 first.
Okay, here is the setup. Middle of the 4th inning, a team makes a pitching change. The new relief pitcher jogs in from the bullpen, takes his mandated warm-up tosses from the mound. After the final toss, the catcher jogs out to the mound to quickly review their pitch signals. The NFHS ruling in the casebook explicitly dictates that this interaction is not considered a P2P meeting. The justification provided is, quote, "It is in the best interest of all that the catcher and new pitcher get aligned."
The rationale provided by the NFHS is entirely rooted in human safety. Think about the physics involved. If the catcher puts down 2 fingers calling for a curveball in the dirt, but the pitcher misinterprets the sign and throws a 90-mile-per-hour rising fastball at the catcher's mask, somebody's going to suffer a catastrophic injury. It might be the catcher, or it might be the umpire standing directly behind him. So the NFHS logically says, yes, please take 20 seconds, get your signs aligned. We will not penalize you for prioritizing physical safety.
That is a perfectly reasonable, compassionate application of the rules. But now, let's flip the page to Case Play 5. It's the bottom of the 5th inning. The starting pitcher is struggling, sweating, throwing balls. The shortstop, trying to be a leader, calls time and goes to the mound to deliver a brief pep talk.
Boom. That action legally burns the team's one allowed P2P meeting for the inning. The quota is met.
Right. The umpire says, let's go. The shortstop returns to his position, and they resume play. The very next pitch, the pitcher and catcher get violently crossed up on the signs. The catcher expects a slider outside. The pitcher throws a fastball inside. It's a terrifying miscommunication. The catcher immediately stands up, points to the umpire, and asks for time so he can jog out to the mound and fix the signal confusion.
And the official NFHS casebook ruling here is genuinely shocking. It states that the umpire must aggressively DNY the request for time. The team has already used their one allocated meeting for the inning, the mathematical limit is exhausted, and the umpire must order the catcher back behind the plate to play ball.
I am officially pushing back on this. We have to dissect this contradiction because it feels like a massive oversight. Why is physical safety, the act of getting aligned, considered a universally valid, unpenalized excuse in Case Play 4 for a relief pitcher, but completely ignored and cast aside in Case Play 5 when the exact same physical danger exists?
You are pushing back because it is a bureaucratic blind spot. In Case Play 5, the rule makers in the boardroom are rigidly enforcing the mathematical quota of the new pace of play rule to the point of absolute absurdity. They are prioritizing the 1 per inning limit over the foundational safety logic they literally just established 1 paragraph prior. The physical danger of a 90-mile-per-hour fastball hitting an unprepared catcher in the collarbone or shattering an umpire's mask doesn't magically evaporate just because the shortstop gave a motivational speech 3 minutes ago. The risk is identical.
So, what is the practical solution? Because an umpire standing on the dirt cannot simply look at a terrified 16-year-old catcher and say, "Sorry, kid, I read the casebook. You're out of timeouts. Hope you don't take a fastball to the throat." That is a recipe for a lawsuit and a moral failing.
This is where Patrick Farber's expertise as an elite game manager truly shines. He recommends looking beyond the rigid text of the NFHS and pulling from the nuanced logic used by the NCAA and OBR, the official baseball rules used in the major leagues, to navigate this perilous gray area. His advice is a masterclass in how to officiate the game, not just the book.
Explain OBR logic. He essentially says you don't grant the defense a full P2P meeting, but you absolutely must address the hazard.
Exactly. If a team has exhausted their meeting limit and they clearly visibly get crossed up on signs, the umpire shouldn't allow the catcher to just casually jog out there alone and hang out on the mound for a strategic summit. That violates the pace of play rule. Instead, the umpire should immediately grant time, step out from behind home plate, and physically walk out to the mound with the catcher.
You essentially act as an armed chaperone for the conversation.
Precisely. You walk out there, you scan between the pitcher and the catcher, and you say, "Gentlemen, you have exactly 10 seconds to get your signs straight, and you are not allowed to discuss defensive strategy, pickoffs, or pitch sequencing. Fix the signs. Go." You ensure they only discuss the signals, you ensure it happens rapidly, and that you get the game moving again safely. You haven't granted them a tactical advantage, but you have mitigated a genuine, life-threatening physical hazard.
It is the perfect pragmatic balance of enforcing the spirit of the pace of play rule while refusing to compromise on human safety. A rigid, blind application of Gates' book ruling isn't worth an umpire or a player taking a baseball off the windpipe. It is about officiating with wisdom, experience, and empathy, not just reciting a textbook.
And honestly, that philosophical balance brings us to a perfect synthesis of everything we've meticulously unpacked today. When you step back and look at the totality of these 2026 rule changes, you can clearly see 4 distinct pillars driving the NFHS's vision for the future of the sport.
Let's review the architecture. First, we have administrative standardization. By unifying the uniform rules across all sports, they are streamlining the bureaucracy and making life infinitely easier for athletic departments. Second, we have game integrity. Banning wearable tech guarantees the focus remains entirely on the athletic competition, not the pursuit of viral content. And aggressively closing the courtesy runner loophole ensures that cunning coaches cannot manipulate administrative documents to gain an unfair physical advantage.
The third pillar is paramount safety and collision avoidance. This is entirely embodied by the monumental, landscape-altering shift to the double first base. By radically expanding the geometry of the field into foul territory, they are physically separating the batter runner from the defensive fielder on the most dangerous high-speed plays of the game. And finally, the fourth pillar is pace of play, heavily addressed by capping those tedious, ego-driven, player-initiated P2P meetings at a strict limit of 1 per inning.
For you listening, whether you are calling the shots from the dugout, sweating inside the umpiring gear, or keeping score in the bleachers, understanding the deep why and the mechanical how behind these rules provides you with a massive tactical advantage. If you are a coach who truly grasps that a missed double first base violation requires an active live ball appeal, you can drill your first baseman to instinctively execute that tag, while the opposing coach is still screaming at the umpire about why his runner was initially called safe. That granular level of knowledge literally wins playoff games.
But as we've discussed, knowledge is only powerful when it is applied correctly in the chaotic heat of the moment. And these sweeping geometric and procedural changes are guaranteed to generate a massive amount of heat in the coming seasons.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to mull over as we wrap up. Something that builds on the foundation of everything we've analyzed, but goes far beyond the black ink printed on the page. I want you to deeply consider the transitional reality of the upcoming 2026 season.
The chaotic purgatory year where the double first base is technically optional.
Exactly. Imagine the absolute mental and physical whiplash for a high school team entrenched in a tense, high-stakes playoff race. Picture their schedule. Half of their away games are played on newly renovated modern fields featuring the massive 15 by 30-inch double first base spanning across the foul line. The other half of their games are played on older, traditional dirt infields with the standard, solitary white canvas bag.
It's a spatial inconsistency nightmare.
Think about the severe toll that takes on the human body and brain. How will that constant game-to-game visual and physical inconsistency affect the split-second, deeply ingrained muscle memory of a batter runner trying to leg out a crucial infield single? On Tuesday, his brain fires signals telling his legs to aim for the orange bag safely in foul territory. On Thursday, there is no orange bag, and he has to violently adjust his stride mid-sprint to hit the white bag without colliding with the fielder. Or think about the first baseman, stretching desperately for an errant throw in the bottom of the 7th inning with the season on the line. His spatial awareness of where the edge of the world is, where safety lies, is constantly being reset every 48 hours.
It raises a profound, almost philosophical question about the very nature of the sport itself.
it really does. It forces all of us to ask, in the chaotic, high-speed, pressure cooker moments that ultimately define a season, how much of the game is actually governed by the sterile rules written in a federation handbook, and how much is governed by pure, uninterrupted, subconscious human instinct? When the rules alter the fundamental geometry of the earth beneath your cleats every other day, which one ultimately wins out in the fraction of a second before impact? Instinct or intellect? We'll let you decide.